On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we continue to break down the New York Knicks 25-26 schedule, their toughest stretch of the season, their easiest stretches of the season. How many games will they actually win? It's all coming up right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gavin Shaw. I am a New York City native. I'm a credentialed media member that's been covering the New York Knicks for nearly a decade, and I'm the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast. Be sure to check us out there. Continued coverage 7 days a week throughout the offseason, which I don't think most national podcasts are doing. He's Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media over at thestrict.land. But if you're lost, well, I'm here to tell you, this is the Locked On Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, your daily podcast on the New York Knicks, giving you the most detailed insight on your favorite team. 5 whole days a week throughout the regular season, 8 days a week in the playoffs, 3 days a week in August, but sometimes 4. Last week we got to 4. So be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans and subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team every single day. As mentioned on today's show, we continue to talk through the 2025-2026 schedule. Took a few days to digest, took a few days to really think about what are the biggest games. If you're interested in that conversation, we did on yesterday's show. Today, we break down the toughest stretches, we break down the easiest stretches, and we predict if the Knicks go over or under 53.5 wins, I believe, is the FanDuel number, unless I'm completely out of my mind. It is 53.5 wins. So we're going to talk about all that right now on Locked On Knicks. Alex, we start with the Knicks' toughest stretch of the season. To me, this is pretty obvious because they have one stretch that is just absurd. But I'm curious if you disagree, if you have any pushback. Do you think was there another stretch that I didn't note that stood out to you as being particularly hard?
I think my only issue with the stretch that you picked out is that it wasn't long enough.
Oh, wow.
I actually have roughly the same stretch. I think we both zeroed in on the same part of the schedule, but I just started it about let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games earlier, 6 games earlier. So I've got their toughest stretch of the season as being starting on Wednesday, February 4th, ending Monday, March 9th. And the games are in order: versus Denver at home, at Detroit, at Boston, versus Indiana at home, at Philly, which who knows what they're going to be this year, but always feisty when they play the Knicks. Then back home versus Detroit, home versus Houston. Then on a back-to-back, they have to travel to Chicago, which should not be a hard game, but just the fact that they have to go from a home night game, a home primetime night game starting at 8:30 the night before, and then get on a plane and go right to Chicago makes that kind of tough. Then they play at Cleveland on that same road trip, then at Milwaukee, then head home. And luckily they have a few days in between those games, but go from at Milwaukee to at home versus San Antonio, then at Toronto. So I guess you want to call those 2 games the respite there, but it's Wemby and probably a better San Antonio team this year. And then at Toronto, which is a team that, again, just like Philly, always plays the Knicks tough because it's an in-division team and they've always kind of seemed like they have a bone to pick. Then come home the next day, again, another like road back to home, back to back, where they have to come back the next day and face OKC that next day in a national TV game on March 4th. Then they take a little road trip, which we highlighted a bit on last show, which is at Denver, at the Lakers, at the Clippers. And then I think that road trip technically ends with at Utah, then at Indiana. So I could have even potentially pushed this another 2 games because that's just hard schedule making where you have to do all those West Coast games, 2 high elevation cities, and then go to Indiana and play, and then come home and play Golden State, and then play Indiana again at home. I mean, really, I could have stretched this to March 17th, but either way, just a really murderous February into March for the Knicks. I think that is easily the toughest part of their schedule, and I don't think it's any coincidence that they're not playing a lot of Eastern Conference teams, or like the Eastern Conference teams they're playing are the ones that seemingly are a threat to them. But that's when they're getting a lot of their Western Conference out on the schedule, and I think it's going to be pretty difficult for them in a lot of those matchups.
Yeah, I want to get a little macro here while we're having this conversation. Maybe we can do the second segment too, because we're going to get into the easiest stretch. But it's very clear that there's and this has been true. I think each of the last couple of seasons, because they generally save that big West Coast swing where you play the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Lakers, Clippers, or like three of those four teams, and now Oklahoma City obviously is the toughest one of those for the second half of the year. Generally post All-Star break. There's going to be just this pressure on the Knicks to build up a little bit of cushion in the first half of the year. And granted, like I do think some of the drama is sucked out of this regular season. And maybe I'm dead wrong about this, because every year we think we have such a clear picture of the East. Like last year, you were to your credit more dubious than I was, but we thought the Sixers were going to be in the mix. We knew the Celtics were going to be in the mix. I don't think we anticipated quite how good the Pacers would be after a slow start. Maybe we were a little bit too high on the Bucks. We weren't high enough on Detroit, but generally you have a good feel. And coming into this season, it feels like the Knicks and Cavs, like we discussed this with Danny last week, are just sort of in their own tier in the Eastern Conference. And that ends up being true, particularly from a regular season perspective, though. I'm telling you, I have a feeling Orlando, if they're healthy, I think they could be as good as a high 50 wins team. I'm a little bit more dubious Detroit gets there. I don't think Milwaukee gets there. I really think Orlando and maybe Atlanta are really like the only threats to have monster seasons. And Orlando is really the only one I could see outside of Cleveland and New York, barring like a lot of injuries, being a 1 seed or a 2 seed. With all those caveats in tow, I'm not sure. I still think there's just an immense pressure for the Knicks. They should be, even if they're slightly behind Cleveland, they should be 5 games up on every other team in the Eastern Conference going to the All-Star break, just because, and I guess every team in the East is an easy schedule, but the Knicks should dominate the first 45 to 50 games this year, because maybe we could finish up this segment just going through it and predicting their record in this stretch. You're right to extend it. This is murderer's row, right? You are playing mine was just going to be the last 11 games of that. And of those 11 games, 7 are on the road. You have a couple back-to-backs, 2 teams that won at least 64 games last year, 6 teams that won at least 50. And out of that group, I think clearly the Rockets, Nuggets, Clippers, and Spurs all substantially better. I think the Lakers with skinny Luka and a real center, even if he doesn't always try hard, and DeAndre Ayton are going to be significantly better. I don't see why the Thunder wouldn't be better. Bringing back essentially their entire team from last year. Like the Knicks could just if Mike Brown hasn't done a good job managing their minutes and they're not lucky enough to be healthy, like imagine if Jalen Brunson's hurt for that stretch. Imagine if Cat's hurt. Imagine if OG's hurt. Like I think that's a stretch where the Knicks could get really beat up potentially.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to essentially be like early in this. There's sort of a little bit of difficulty to this, right? Because with a new head coach, I mean, look, it's not like this isn't the case every single season with every team, whatever. Like you have to try to start off well, but I feel like there is a particular pressure on the Knicks to come out storming out of the gates this year.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see if they get like the new coach bump or if it's sort of a learning curve early, because if they get kind of behind the 8 ball and they reach this point of the season where they hit February and they're still sitting there being like, okay, yeah, we're like, I don't know, 6-7 games above 500 or something like that, like kind of toying with like middle seed territory, something like that. There's a chance they might just get stranded there. Even if they start gelling better, they might end up like a 4 seed or something, or a 5 seed or lower than we think that they're going to be if they're not able to come out really storming out of the gates. Because I really think, I mean, maybe we can give predictions here on how many games we think they would win out of that, but I really think there's a chance that for that like month and a half stretch that they come out of it like roughly 500 maybe.
Yeah.
And if they don't already have like a 10 games above, 15 games above 500 something cushion around that time, then they might just tread water during that stretch. And if they haven't already kind of established themselves, then you start running out of runway. And like you do have, I think, a fairly easy stretch to end the season, which is good. So like you'll have after that Indiana game I mentioned, then it's, I mean, this is maybe tipping our hat towards next segment a little bit, but you have like at Memphis, at Brooklyn, Washington, New Orleans, at Charlotte, at OKC, which is not easy by any stretch, and at Houston, not easy. But then Chicago, at Atlanta, which I I said was one of my late season tests last episode, and then versus Boston at home, but Toronto and Charlotte to end the season. Like, you've got a little room to kind of get that couple game cushion right at the end of the season. But if you haven't already built something up by the time you hit February, I think they're going to have a tough time going forward this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. And how about we come back next segment and we run through that stretch game by game, because I do think that's a fun exercise. And then we're going to get into our easiest stretch where the Knicks can build a little bit of that cushion. All that coming up next here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to let you know that August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Locked On Knicks has a consensus Super Bowl pick. We're not taking the Ravens. We're not taking the Bills. We're not taking the Eagles. We're not taking Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Those are all too easy. We're going with the fifth best odds, Detroit Lions. You can get them at plus 1,100 right now. I know they've lost a little bit off the offensive line. I know they lost a lot of brain power on the offensive side of the ball with Ben Johnson, I want to say. That's not his name. Moving on to the Chicago Bears. Best backfield in football. I'm a Jared Goff believer. I'm an Amon St. Brown believer. I don't know their names, but I'm very, very confident in the Detroit Lions. Again, I do not host Locked On Lions. I host Locked On Knicks, but I'm confident in them anyway. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, we're back here on Locked On Knicks, continue to talk through the New York Knicks schedule. We're going to get to the easiest stretch of the season in just a sec. But Alex, I had 11 games. You said, watch this. You stretched it out to 17. You put the too small signal on me, and I had to take it like a man, because you're absolutely right. This is a 17-game stretch of hell. I'm going to give you first crack at this. Take me, or maybe we both go game by game and give our predictions. But let's figure out what the record's going to be. Home against Denver. Do they win that game on February 4th?
I'll be optimistic and say yes.
Yeah.
I think they can win that game. I think they've traditionally played Denver pretty well. So, yeah, I'm willing to give them the win on that first one. So I'll say win.
I'm gonna say loss, just because I don't want to say they embarrassed Denver, but first game was the one where OG Anunoby was just incredible, and then he died the next night against the Utah Jazz, and they lost to Jazz. But he was so good in that first game. Second game, the Knicks were struggling a little bit, and then they put together a quarter that was just easily their best quarter of the season. I think the Knicks will come into that one with a lot of confidence. I have a feeling that's like a Jokic special 50 piece. He says, screw this. We're not losing these guys again. Denver has way more depth than they had last year. So I'm gonna say the Knicks and Nuggets, spoilers, ultimately split those two games. I think Denver comes out more motivated. They win the first one. At Detroit on February 6th, you're gonna get an angry Pistons crowd, because they feel like, right or wrong, they were robbed in the playoffs last year. The no call on the Josh Hart high five on Tim Hardaway. Do the Pistons get some revenge against the Knicks?
I'm gonna give the Knicks the win here, going off of the logic of last year's playoffs, which is that both those teams were way better at playing on the road than at home. And the Knicks played way better in Detroit than they did on their home court for the most part. So I'm going to go with the Knicks getting the win there, which maybe gives away what I think is going to happen in the other game later on. But yeah, I'm willing to give the Knicks the win there.
I'm gonna join you in that, because I think we see thank you for tracking this, by the way. I think we see a more optimized version of the Knicks. And I don't know if that's getting my dream of Deuce McBride in the starting lineup, but I think there is, as we said, going into the playoffs last year, and as you're going to hear in an hour-long conversation I had with Kookie Hill, again, that'll be the week that I'm on vacation, first week of September. That one should be coming out maybe a little bit sooner, pending some other stuff. But I have a feeling the Knicks are a little bit more well-equipped to play the Pistons. So I think they win that game. February 8th at Boston, Alex. Are you predicting 3 wins in a row to start the stretch of doom?
I'm actually thinking this one's a trap game. It's a Sunday 12:30 p.m. start. The Knicks always suck in those games. I'm going with a loss here.
I'm gonna take a win. I think Peyton Pritchard drops 40, and I don't think it matters. I think Boston does not have a playable front court rotation, and I think after just getting run the last 2 years in the regular season by the Celtics, the Knicks have some well-deserved confidence, and Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns just bully the Boston Celtics. So I'm going to give them a win. But another revenge opportunity at home against the Pacers, February 10th. What happens in that one?
I don't know, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a hopeful dub here. I hope it's a win. I hope at that point we feel confident enough in where the Knicks are at that facing the Pacers in this odd transitional year where they're without Miles Turner now, where they're obviously without Halliburton for the whole year, that they're able to pull this one out. So I'm gonna give them a dub there.
Yeah, I think so too. I have a feeling the Knicks lose their first game of the year against the Pacers, but they take them a little bit too lightly. Indiana's fired up; they're showing a lot of pride. TJ McConnell's annoying. I think the Knicks get them the next time around. I'll say the Knicks lose their next game at Philly. To me, that is the trap game. I have a feeling that'll be like the one stretch of the year where Joel Embiid is healthy. Tyrese Maxey's obviously had a lot of success against the Knicks. Quentin Grimes revenge game belatedly again. I'll say Philly upsets the Knicks.
I'm also going with a loss there. I think mostly just because it's the second game of a back-to-back, and it's only going, down 95 from New York to Philly. But I think these like home and road back-to-backs are nasty. It's nasty work. And, I think even if it's a short flight, even if it's whatever, like they're probably going to have a pretty emotional game. It's kind of an emotional stretch in general, like just having to face your 3 playoff opponents in a row from last year, going Detroit, Boston, Indiana in 3 straight games.
Yeah.
Granted, each with a day of rest in between, but
Great point. Yeah.
to then have to go at Philly, like, yeah, that I just feel like that's going to be the point of the season too, where maybe they've managed to keep guys healthy enough that they look kind of dangerous, or like Maxey and Edgecombe and possibly Grimes if he ends up re-signing with there eventually. Like all those guys just end up going off on the Knicks or something. Like I could see that being a weirdly one of the ones I feel most confident that they would lose.
All right.
Which brings me to the Detroit game, which is the next one that they play, which is it's actually quite a break.
Yeah, I think that's All-Star break.
Oh, that's the All-Star break. Yeah. So that's right before the All-Star break. So coming back out of the All-Star break, Detroit at home. I'm chalking that one up to be a loss as well. Actually, I think Detroit is going to play them better at the Garden, especially coming right off the All-Star game. Brunson maybe gets voted as a starter again, and Cunningham doesn't, and then that rubs Detroit the wrong way or something. I don't know. They come up with some underdog excuse and turn this into a game that they really go after.
Yeah, I think that's probably Kate's special. So I'll take the L for the Knicks there too. We're taking a long time on this. I'm going to speed run the next 6 before that final 4 games of death. We got Houston at home on February 21st, at Chicago, at Cleveland, at Milwaukee, San Antonio, at Toronto. So that is let me recount. I think that is a 6-game stretch. I'm going to say the Knicks go. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm going to say the Knicks go 4-2. I think they beat Houston at home. Another tough game after last year. I'm going to say they beat Chicago, lose to Cleveland, lose to Milwaukee, beat San Antonio. I think is going to be my run of those. But what are you thinking?
I'm going to go lose Houston, revenge back-to-back at Chicago, win that one. I'll say win against Cleveland, win against Milwaukee, lose to San Antonio. Again, I just hate the Knicks in Sunday nooner starts. It's Sunday 1:00 on ABC. I just feel like that's not going to go well for them. And where does that put me? Right, that puts me at 3. Yeah, so I'm also going to say 4-2 at Toronto. They beat Toronto on Tuesday the 3rd as well. So then that brings us to the final 4 games here. So Gavin, we'll still kind of speed run these, but we'll do them individually. Oklahoma City at home, second game of a back-to-back after playing in Toronto the night before. I'm putting this one as a loss. I just think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, loss.
Then we got at Denver starting that road trip that we mentioned. So March 6th at Denver, 2 days after that game against OKC. Weirdly, I'm going to give them the dub here, even though I'm a little worried about the climate and all that. And the elevation, I think they could pull this one out.
I'm gonna say win two because I gave them a loss in the first one. But then I think they finished the road trip losing both games against the LA teams. I think they're just gonna even with the All-Star break in the middle. I think they are dead tired at the end of this run. We highlighted a lot in the first show and the first segment, so I won't totally belabor the point, but they have not played well the last few years against the Lakers and Clippers. JJ Redick as good as any coach at going after Cat based on that game in MSG last year. Luka always seems to just play exceptionally well and angry against the Knicks. And then the Clippers, I'm weirdly a little more optimistic this year just because the Knicks, like the Clippers always feel more athletic than the Knicks in that matchup. And the Knicks should actually have that advantage with how old the Clippers are, but they're just deep. Zubac is a tough matchup. John Collins adds an interesting element for them. I have a feeling the Knicks falter a little bit at the end of this trip.
Yeah, I've got them splitting those. I think lose to the Lakers, win against the Clippers, and that's how they end it. So I think that leaves us one win apart. That's it. So we came up pretty similar on this. So fun exercise, but yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch. I mean, the fact that we went through and it was more or less like 500.
Yeah, I'm adding it up right now. Let me see. I'm 7-2, 7-3, 8-3, 8-4. I must have missed one in here because I'm 8-5. That's not 17, but I'll go over it again. I think we are pretty close to 500.
Yeah, I'm at like 9. I think it's 16 games. So
yeah.
I'm 9-7. So yeah, right around 500. And I think you're 8-8.
6. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, tough stretch for sure. But let's move on to our easiest stretch of the season, Gavin. We can kind of just quickly hit on this. But you had a few highlighted. So we'll talk about that in just a second. We get back in, talk about our easiest stretches of the season, and then do the grandest part of this exercise, do the over-under based off what the FanDuel odds say the Knicks over-under is for this year. So we'll get back in and do that in just a moment. Alrighty, so let's get into the easiest stretches of the season, Gavin. I think this is something that we're both definitely in agreement is going to happen early in the season. I think we are just, once again, I think I've just sort of absorbed at least one of your stretches and just, or actually, I've kind of absorbed two of your stretches that you picked out,
that's it,
and just made it one mega stretch. I'm clearly just looking at this way too macro, and I'm just like, hey, the whole like 2 months is going to be my stretch. But introduce some of yours first, and then I'll get into my once again monster stretch of I picked exactly 16 games again. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
your
definition of a stretch is very concrete in your mind. I wrote in the notes min 5 games, and you crossed that out and wrote min 16 games,
minimum 15 games. Yeah,
one over just coincidentally. All right, my first one I had was like basically like 5 of the first 10 of the season. They get from October 31st to November 9th, Chicago, Washington, Minnesota, Brooklyn. That's kind of that's a good one, but it's just too small. Obviously, one tough game in there in Minnesota. Next one I had, which I think this is probably my final answer here. I had from November 24th to December 5th. They get at Brooklyn, at Charlotte, Milwaukee, Toronto at home, at Boston, Charlotte, Utah. Boston, Milwaukee, the only returning playoff teams outside of Boston. And you got obviously Boston, just a completely different team. Their front court totally decimated. Their depth totally decimated. I have a feeling they end up being like the 7th or 8th seed just out of pride. And I think Peyton Pritchard is going to be an all-star this year. That guy scares the crap out of me if I haven't made that clear already. This is a highly diminished Boston team. Milwaukee, I think, is slightly better, but they also don't have Damian Lillard, which even though he hurt them defensively, like I don't really know who's generating offense for that team consistently outside of Giannis. So I'm not really scared of the Bucks. Those teams, not including Boston, combined just 32% of their games last year. 3 games against 2 of the worst 3 teams in basketball last season. So that one just feels like ripe for the Knicks to rip off a 7-game winning streak. I'd be shocked if they don't lose at least one of those, because that even though the Knicks are incredibly good against sub 500 teams, it just feels like they'll lose focus and drop one. The other stretch I had was mid to late January, from January 9th to January 30th, at Phoenix, at Portland, at Sacramento, at Golden State, Phoenix, Dallas, Brooklyn, Philly, Sacramento, Toronto, Portland, just a myriad of non-playoff teams. Some solid Western Conference teams, but the Suns, I think, are just going to be bad this year. The Knicks always seem to have the Suns number in the Jalen Brunson era. They should not lose to the Suns. this season. Like Portland, really good defensively. The Knicks should ultimately be able to beat them. Sacramento is fun just for the Mike Brown angle. They should be able to beat them. They should kill Brooklyn. They probably won't, but they should beat them by 40 every time they play. We mentioned Cooper Flag and MSG. Should be a good game. Knicks should win it. Philly on the road, sure, tough. Sacramento, Toronto, Portland, like that is again, like, I don't know. Is that 11 games, 9-2 for the Knicks in that? Like there are these stretches, Alex, like I don't even think they have to be perfect, but if they just take care of business, they're going to be in such good position heading into the second half of the year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that stretch you just highlighted is with how we were just saying that stretch, starting in March is going to be so hellacious for them, or starting in February rather, is going to be so hellacious for them. Like that January stretch is going to be so key that they take advantage and win a bunch of those games, I think, because you got to get the work done early in the season. Then you're going to have a good January, I think, to end up good overall, because I think that the February into March time is going to be really, really trying for this team. Much like I did in the first part of this exercise, like I said, I just kind of expanded sort of. So I have another 16 game stretch, and I go from game 3 to game 19 at Miami, at Milwaukee, at Chicago. I know those are all road games, but all very winnable road games, in my opinion. Then just a lovely stretch at home, which you partly highlighted there, but Chicago, Washington, Minnesota, Brooklyn, Memphis, Orlando, Miami. Maybe I'm undervaluing Memphis here a little bit, but like the only team that really, really scares me there a bit is Orlando. And even that team doesn't like scare me. And those are all home games. And I only two back-to-backs in there. But still not particularly terrifying. Then actually a nice, decent break in between that game with Miami and then the next game, which is also against Miami on the 17th. So they get 3 days off in between those two games to travel to Miami for another game against them. I'm not particularly scared by Miami this year. Then at Dallas, like, again, they're going to be without Kyrie Irving, like, whatever. I'm not particularly worried about them. At Orlando, at Brooklyn, at Charlotte, and then versus Milwaukee at home, and then versus Toronto at home. To me, that stands out as a really nice stretch. I guess I cut mine off a little before you did yours, and I think actually also adding Boston, Charlotte, Utah in there too. That's 3 other very winnable games. So I think
we're going 19 game stretch now.
Yeah. So I mean, really, that's a big potential stretch for the Knicks. Like that's where you can pad out that lead early in the season, really make your case for being one of the East's elite teams early on in the season. So I don't know how much more we have to talk about that, because I feel like we kind of lumped that in with the toughest part of the season talk. But I think they have their work cut out for them to have a really good training camp, to gel early under Mike Brown and figure this thing out by like mid-November, and have like a really concrete system, good offense, good enough defense, and really start running teams off the floor and having a good time out there. Because I think December and then parts of January are going to be really key. That's really from all of like November, December, January. I think there are just tons and tons of winnable games, and then it gets really, really hard to end the season. So hopefully they've got their stuff together early on and can really take advantage of that. But Gavin, it's come that magical time to go over the over under, and I think I forgot to write it down here, so hopefully you have it written down what their number is. What was it?
It's 53 and a half.
53 and a half. So since you're the prepared one, I'll let you answer first. Do you think the Knicks are going over or under 53 and a half wins this year?
Oh man, I would love to hear. I feel like I've always predicted over. Maybe one year I went under. I think they get to 54. I think they just sneak over this part. I was just looking because here's what's interesting to me. Last year at the All-Star break, they were 36 and 8. Oh, sorry, they were 36 and 18, right? They got that 149-148 overtime win over Atlanta, and the vibes were good. That was reliant on really thin margins, right? Because they were exceptionally healthy last year. Right? They were one of the healthiest teams in basketball, outside of Jalen Brunson missing 15 games after the All-Star break. They did not really have they had lingering injuries that affected the level of play of guys like Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns. You would think with less minutes, in theory, they should be even healthier this year. We saw with Cleveland in the playoffs, it doesn't always work that way, right? You can always have a fluke injury. You can always just have worse luck. There's just some variance from year to year. Like they're one injury away from that 54 number being very shaky because they went 15-13 after the All-Star break last year. And yet I look back at last year's team. I look back at the insistence on playing a starting lineup that was just not good, Alex, right? That was a net negative after the All-Star break, more minutes than any other lineup in the NBA. And even if you want to say Mike Brown won't change anything tactically, and I do think he'll improve the Knicks tactically, and they'll have more answers this year to what other teams are doing, how other teams are adjusting from game to game. Even if you want to pretend that that's not a thing, simply by changing the starting lineup, there should be a better team. They're deeper than they were last year. They still managed to get to 51 wins last year. They have to have that Tom Thibodeau quality where they are just unbeatable against bad teams, and maybe they lose that a tiny bit under Mike Brown, but they still have Jalen Brunson. They still have Josh Hart. They'll have Mitchell Robinson most of the year. That was the one injury that really affected them, right? He essentially didn't play in the regular season. So all that to me adds up to a 54-win team, but I'm curious if you share my optimism.
Me, the eternal optimist,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to go under.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't think they're going to win 54 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, maybe that's underestimating the ease with which they should be able to attack the East this year because of the two teams that posed the greatest threat to them last year being, decimated this year by injuries already, with Halliburton out and with Tatum out. I think that they should be able to get their stuff together. I worry a bit about them being as dominant as they need to be early in the season. I think that we're going to see a little bit of growing pains. I think that defensively, hopefully they'll hold on to some of the lessons from Tibbs, but also hopefully they're trying a lot of different stuff than what we saw under Tibbs. And I think that's going to be key to their potential to get further in the postseason. But I think it's going to lead to some growing pains early. Like if Mike Brown and if his new staff, ultimately decide to try some stuff that Tibbs would have never thought to, like doing switch everything more often, or God forbid, going to a zone potentially from time to time, which almost every other team in the NBA in recent years has done, except for Tibbs with the Knicks. But like doing all those little things might take some getting used to for these guys. Like, and I worry that as they work through those things. Now, the other thing that I'm hopeful for is that Mike Brown is more willing to try out different combinations of players throughout the season, try different lineups, leave a lineup out there, even if they're struggling for a bit, to try to get some chemistry with them that'll pay off down the line. Like there are a lot of things that I'm kind of looking at and being like, I hope that he does it different than Tibbs for the sheer fact of like, these are the things that we got on Tibbs for his whole time with the Knicks. I think that those things are unfortunately going to come with some more regular season losses if Mike Brown is willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is all totally wish casting and presumptive because most people that you talk to that know anything about Mike Brown and how he coached the Kings and whatever, there's a lot of complaints, at least rotations wise and stuff, that were pretty similar to the complaints about Tibbs, about not necessarily playing certain combinations as much as he should, not playing certain young players as much as he should. I think there's a very real chance that there's a correlation between like Deuce McBride and Keon Ellis in this regard, where Kings fans wanted more Keon Ellis, Knicks fans wanted more Deuce McBride. Maybe there's a little more of that going on with the Knicks. Who knows? We won't know until they start taking the floor in a couple months. But I just think there's going to be a little too much in the way of growing pains, and I think the Knicks this year might be poised to be one of those teams that, well, I think the East in general, I think sub 50 wins could potentially get you the 2 seed this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw last year it was the Knicks got the 3 seed with 50 wins, but with 50 wins the year prior to that, they got the 2 seed. I think this year could be more like that year with, hey, maybe Cleveland is still the regular season juggernaut that they've been in recent years. And I think it's just going to kind of be a dogfight beyond that, outside of the from seed 2 through seed like 6. I don't know. I think it's just going to be a lot of parity, a lot of guys beating up on each other, a lot of different teams in the mix. And I think the Knicks are going to find themselves maybe kind of in the middle of all that for part of the season. I think they're going to level out probably at around 50 wins again, 50, 51, something like that. But I don't think they're going to hit 54. As much as that seems like not a huge jump, I think we've seen in recent years with what we've expected, especially like this past year where we thought maybe they would take that leap and be like, I don't know, a 55 win team or something like that. It's a pretty big plateau to cross to go from like a 50 win team to a 55 win team. So I don't think they're going to hit it. But I hope to be proven wrong, as always, whenever I'm ever rarely pessimistic, if you could call it that, about the Knicks. Really, I'm kind of optimistic that I just think they're going to be trying new things, which is good. And hopefully they're just able to get it all together in time for the postseason and make a good postseason run again. Because I think this will be perhaps their best chance in our lifetime this year to capture lightning in a bottle and at minimum make a finals run, but possibly win a championship this year if they can make it happen, just thanks to how the path has been laid out for them to potentially get to the finals by the injuries to their contemporaries and all that. But anyway, Gavin, I think we've covered the schedule about as thoroughly as we could here with all the various ins and outs. Of course, if people haven't listened to the first episode, make sure to go back and listen to that. But unless you had any final notes, I think we could probably wrap this schedule discussion up for this year and continue looking towards the new season and hopefully getting some news about the final roster spot soon.
No, all I'll say is, and this is maybe a whole episode worth of conversation, so I'll leave this for people to ponder. I think the experimenting and not pushing for every regular season win will actually lead to more regular season wins. Crazy concept. We'll talk about it more on future episodes. This has been Locked On Knicks. We'll talk to you soon.